This is the cheat sheet review for pretty much all the lessons regarding methods from lesson number 31 on through 34. I just decided to package them all up in one video. Okay, so let's start with creating overloaded methods, and that would be in CS-ASP031. And overloaded methods. We talked about the use case for this when you ever have several different methods that all kind of do the same thing, and they only differ by their method signature. So different method signature, but same basic function. The method signature, if you'll recall, is the number and type of input parameters. And I guess just really for that matter, just parameters in general. And so, but they can have different return types, which was an interesting little fact. Okay, so that was creating overloaded methods. Next up, we had creating optional parameters. CS-ASP032. And if you recall, an optional parameter has default values. So optional parameters provide default values when you define the method. There we go. So if you don't supply a value, the default will be used. All right, and some examples here will probably be helpful to add to our list. Private void my method, and we'll start off with a required parameter called, it's a string called my required param. And I'll just go ahead and go to the next line just to make this a little bit easier to read. Int my optional parameter, and the reason why this will be optional is because we use the equal sign and then whatever we want to set the default to. And then let's set another optional parameter too. So we'll give it two optional parameters here. My other optional parameter equals 5. Okay, so something like that. And so it can be called in a number of different ways. The easiest way would be just to use the required parameter. So let's just say hello required param, and then it could be called by using my method. Here, in fact, let's just copy this each time. We could just pass in the second parameter, which would be optional, and leave off the final optional parameter, or we can just give it all three parameters, so 100 and 500. But what you cannot do, you can't skip. Here, let me put that in there. You cannot skip a parameter, an optional parameter, right? So you can't do that, comma, 500. Okay, that will not work. In fact, let's go ahead and put error there. Okay. All right, so that's it for optional parameters. The next one up is passing named arguments into input parameters, like so. Whoops. And this will be in CS-ASP033. Let's go ahead and give that an underline. And so a named parameter will, or named argument will allow us to send in parameter arguments out of order, which is kind of interesting. We just prefix the input parameter argument with the name of the parameter we're passing in, colon, and then the value. So this would probably benefit from a little example, my method and my required param. So we'll use the previous example there. My required param equals, well, actually, let's start with my other optional param is going to be set to 500. We'll set my required param equal to hello required param, and then finally my optional param. We'll set that equal to 100, like so, and just remember that you still have to pass in required parameters. You can't leave them out, although you could leave out the optional ones. All right, and then finally we want to go and talk about creating methods with output parameters, and that was in lesson CS-ASP 034, and basically an output parameter, as we've seen before in the use of the try parse, it allows you to return a value the normal way and return a value via a method parameter. So we can do something like this. Private bool my method, and then string my required param, and then here we'll create an output one. So out int my optional param, like so. Whoops. And then we could call it like this from someplace else. It would be, we'd have to create something to hold the value. So we would typically do, let's say, okay, so we need the int value. So int my value equals 0, and then we can call if my method some required text, and then out my value Okay, so that's kind of a lame case, but hopefully you get the idea. All right, so that's pretty much it for the cheat sheet. We're going to pick it up with a couple of challenges now, and they're going to be fun. So we'll see you there. Thanks.